of all these life-giving trees that flow in the breeze, giving us the air to breathe, came from the seeds that sons and daughters had sown, passing down histories through stories, genes, and bones. Hear the whispers of the past, dictate your prologue, a generational trio through which memories are prolonged. So we reach down nourishing waters to seek truths, except we receive nourishment when we're digging the roots.
Good evening. This is Nika Smith, and I'm here for the 39th episode of BlackProGen Live. We are so elated that you all could join us for tonight's topic and discussion. We have a lot of things to talk about. We've got quite a bit of content to get to. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get all the official business out of the way. Watching live tonight, don't forget to participate and be part of the conversation. If there's something we say, something you have a question about, or if you just like to weigh in, feel free to tweet us at BlackProGen. You can also hashtag your comments with BlackProGen. We also want to remind you as well, if you're watching live and you're on a computer, you can comment. There's a live chat taking place right now. So if you're watching in your browser, there is a chat to the right next to the live video that just says chat, and you can participate. If you're watching on the YouTube app, the live chat is at the bottom of the screen. So feel free to chime in there. It's a really active chat group. We always have amazing people join us, and they provide us some great feedback, and we have a great time with them. So don't forget to tweet us, hashtag your comments, and also participate in the live chat. Tonight's topic is people of color in Indiana, Illinois, Michigan, and Ohio. Indiana created more than just the Jackson 5. Chicago is home to more than just Bronzeville, while Michigan is more than Magic Johnson, and Ohio was a haven for runaway slaves. Learn about resources, tips, tricks, and more when it comes to Indiana, Illinois, Michigan, and Ohio, which that is our topic for the evening. Also, don't forget to get the latest and greatest from BlackProGen in your inbox. Subscribe to the Lowdown today. You'll be able to have access to our blogs, podcasts, and more. So be sure to check the description of this recording and any BlackProGen Live episode for the link to subscribe to the Lowdown by BlackProGen. Also, don't forget to check out the other episodes of BlackProGen Live. There's a playlist. Did you know there's a playlist? You can actually sit there if you're at work or wherever you are and listen to the episodes. I actually do that myself sometimes when I am in an area I'm not entirely remembering everything about, or there's something that someone mentioned that I forgot, so I have to go back to the episode. So don't forget to go back. We've got 38 other episodes of BlackProGen Live that are right there for your viewing pleasure. In fact, I just referred out that North Carolina, South Carolina episode a couple days ago because someone tweeted me and they were saying they were researching there. And I remember how our queen of the night, Tony Carrier, was in the dark that episode, but I'm telling you, it was one of our most watched episodes, and it was chock full of information. So feel free to make sure that you just go ahead and check out our episode archive. So before we get into the topic of the evening, let's go ahead and introduce our panelists. You guys can go ahead and come off of mute. Let's go with the ice cream lady. We'll have her go first. Unmute yourself, Shelly.
I was going to Twitter. Good evening, everyone. This is Shelly Murphy, aka Family Tree Girl in Central Virginia. Welcome.
All right, all right. And let's go with the lady in the orange family reunion shirt. I don't even know if it is one. I'm just assuming it's a family reunion shirt.
No, it says Clearwater, Florida.
Family reunion destination, perhaps.
Right.
There's a beautiful beach there.
Yes, it is. Good afternoon, everybody.
All right. Linda Sims is here from sunny and amazing St. Louis.
St. Louis, Missouri, where it's hot. Hot and humid.
Hot and humid. All right. Down in, well, I don't know where she is. She's usually in Florida. Maybe she's at home. I don't know. Tony Carrier.
Hey, I'm Tony Carrier. I'm in Charleston. And I'm from Low Country Africana, and also I'm from the newly launched International African American Museum's Center for Family History. Welcome.
Awesome. We've got our resident Y chromosome in the house.
Hey everybody, this is James Morgan III, coming to you from the nation's capital, Washington, D.C. And I am fresh off vacation from Disney World, where I didn't get to see True, but we tried.
They were in the same location at the exact same time. I thought it was funny because for me on my timeline, I just kept seeing pictures of him and Christy with like Mickey Mouse going. And then like 3 seconds later is a picture of True and her granddaughter going with Mickey Mouse.
Right.
I don't know if does that happen to anybody else? Like for me, it literally every summer there's at least 2 people on my friends list who are in the exact same location at the exact same time, and they don't know each other. But I know the 2 of them. But then they end up like right after Maggie, there were 2 people that I knew who were at the Motown Museum at the exact same time, and I was like, "Are you there for a reunion?" And the person was like, "No, I just went." So that was actually pretty interesting. All right, so go ahead, James. What were you gonna say?
No, I was just gonna say my favorite story with Nika Smith of all time is the fact that she knew my freshman year resident assistant from college. He's a good friend of mine. And I posted a picture of him, and she was like, "How do you guys know each other?" I'm like, "He was my RA freshman year." Shows you 6 degrees of separation.
It is. I tell people that all the time. Folks do not believe me, but I love Pendarvis. Yes, I love Pendarvis. So yeah, I almost always know somebody else. Somebody knows. It's somehow. I'm just that way. All right, True Lewis.
Hey, everybody. I'm fresh from Florida as well. I sure wish I had caught up with James, but you all know me at my true roots, and I just came back from Granddaddy Ike's family reunion where we had over 400 direct descendants. Everybody there was related to Granddaddy Ike, and I presented twice, and I just had a ball. And I'm so glad to see everybody. And I got one more reunion on August the 4th in Montgomery. So if you're in town, give me a shout out. I'm sure I'll run into somebody that I know in the genealogy world in Alabama at the same time again, like I did with James.
I'm sure you probably will. We all 3 of us are nice and tanned. I don't know if anybody noticed. My foundation is off right now.
We're sun-kissed.
I am too. I'm not even wearing makeup because I'm two-toned right now.
Yes.
She said, girl, your neck gonna be one color, your face gonna be another. All right. All right. Last but not least, we have a new face with us tonight, joining us from fill in the blank. I'm not sure where, but let's go ahead. Oh, hey! All right. We gotta talk.
Yeah.
You know my mama is. Go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead. Finish.
Okay, I was gonna say, my family's South Side, so we gotta talk. I only know intersections based on that's how my mother talks about Chicago's intersections. So without further ado, introduce Miss Robin Foster.
I'm doing some visiting in Illinois right now. Really part of South Carolina. I moved away in 2005, and I did research on my I'll be going to Virginia next.
All right.
But ended up in South Carolina one day soon. I done a lot of work with Family Search, and I do a lot of my own work, and now I'm very excited to be a part of the IAAM Center for Family History.
Awesome.
She's a sight for sore eyes. She looks so good. Oh my goodness.
I know. You just have to give her virtual kisses.
Yeah.
Thank you. I found that people, most of you know I've had a stroke, and last year, and I'm not just sitting around. I went all day today, for example, and doctors can't believe me.
We believe you. We believe you.
Bless.
Okay. Yes.
Yes, we believe you.
Wow, wow, wow. Well, all I have to say is we're just glad that you are here with us to join us tonight and to shower all your Chicago and South Carolina love down on us as we talk about the
Yes, it's
topics of the
sprinkling
hour.
down.
Yeah, like I think, yeah, all of us are just so excited that you're here, and we're just grateful that we can count you still among us, the crew.
Amen. Hey, excuse me, Nika, before we get into it tonight, I just want to give a shout out to our chatters, particularly Dale from EO. I looked at his username on here and I immediately knew he was from East Orange, New Jersey. I give a shout out to the street I grew up on is called Scotland Road. And I know he's from where he's from because he said White Castle. That's what's on Scotland Road, White Castle. So I just want to give a big shout out to Dale from EO because he made my night tonight.
All right. Well, Dale just so happens to be our Ask Mariah for the evening. So, yes, Dale from EO. All right, which if we were in the Bay Area, that'd be east side of Oakland. ESO. That's what they would say, ESO.
Nah, it's East Orange.
Yes. Oh my goodness. All right. Well, the chatters are they're having a time in the land, as my grandmother would say. We've got our usual folks here. Muhammad, of course. We've got Tyrone Craft. We've got Maggie. Tammy Ozier is in the house from Maggie. We also have Tommy Peoples is this new person. Thanks for joining us, Tommy. Carmelita, she's joined us before. Of course, Dale from EO or East Orange, right? As well as other folks. Don't forget, Rose Shiver is here as well. So if you are Clarice Mason, just popped in as well. Let's see, we've got a little bit of reverb going on here. I'm going to mute everybody until it's time for you to talk. Let's see, all right, not sure who it was, but anywho, feel free to pop into the chat. Let us know what you're thinking, give us your feedback, whatever. We're also on Twitter, manning, our tweets and everything else. And if you're interested in this topic, feel free to chime in, or if you feel like you are an expert and we're missing something, then let us know. So let's jump right on in. We're talking about Indiana, Illinois, Michigan, Ohio. For me, personally, my Illinois connection is by virtue of the Great Migration. I didn't have folks that, just miraculously, like they were there with DuSable. I did not have that, but I do have a sizable amount of my family that lives in Illinois, as well as in Indiana, as well as Ohio and Michigan. So why do you all feel that these are locations that are important to research?
Definitely pathways north.
Yes.
Pathways north for whatever reason.
So to piggyback on that for myself, with Ohio specifically, but even with the other states as well, you really get a lot of those pathways north even earlier than you would. I mean, I know we're probably going to talk about the Great Migration, but when you start talking about the Underground Railroad, a lot of times it's going through those same locations that you just mentioned. It's going through Cleveland, Cincinnati, going up through Indianapolis and Detroit and all of that. So it's definitely a good place. Even if you don't have ancestry in those states particularly, a lot of people migrated there during that era.
Yeah, they were passing through. I know for Indiana, my family leaving Mississippi were headed to the steel mill. That was a industry at that time.
Wow. My family, they got to Illinois because my grandmother's oldest brother was in World War I, and he discharged in Illinois. And because Uncle King went there, then everybody else followed. Michigan, same thing. Brother got discharged, went to Michigan. Indiana, one of the aunts went there first, set up shop, then everybody else came. Ohio, that's kind of the one-off. It's not too many people there, but there's a few in Cleveland in particular. What were you going to say, Robin?
Oh, I was going to say that you definitely want to research those first. When you start, you research those first, then go back in time. My family ended up in Illinois. Before that, they were in Mississippi. Before that, they were in no, before that they were in Tennessee and Mississippi when you talk about my father's side. So you always start from the beginning, which is migration, and then go back. And on the South Carolina side, they either stayed in South Carolina or they went to Philadelphia, Washington, New York, and therefore.
Wow. Wow. So what do you all feel are, let's just go by state. So when it comes to Indiana, are there sort of enclaves for African Americans in that location? For me, when I think of Indiana, I'm thinking Indianapolis, I'm thinking Gary. For my family, it's Gay. They refer to it as Gay. So when you all are researching your Indiana ancestors, if you have any, or Indiana family members, where are you guys looking at? Where are the concentrations of people of color in Indiana? We'll start with that.
I'll say Fort Wayne, Indiana is huge. One of the instructors at Maggie, her people were there, and it's Roberta Ridley in 1859. And that's pretty amazing to be there and free in 1859, before the Homestead Act opened. And Indiana, for me, also, all my father and his siblings were all born in Allen County in Fort Wayne. So it's a pleasure for me to go there and, do some research when I can.
The two places for me are Indianapolis and East Chicago was the big one. East Chicago, Indiana.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's where my dad's sister was born. They're all born in 5 different states from my grandparents as well. And East Chicago, that was the 50s. That was like our migrational patterns when we started going up there in Chicago, where I noticed a lot of my family from. So yeah, Linda made a good point there.
Mm-hmm.
What when you consider Illinois, I mean, we've got Chicago. I mean, gosh, how can you not talk about Chicago? Cook County within itself is just a whole beat, right? When it comes to records, which for me personally, I love researching Chicago because that means I get to use the Defender.
Yes.
which I love the Chicago Defender. I don't think enough people use that as for a national source. But where else in Chicago or in Illinois? I'm thinking
Joliet. Joliet is that's where I live, but I also have a lot of family in Chicago.
Yeah, I know Alton was a big one. I'm not sure about the demographics today, but I know Alton in that area was also really big, at least back in the 1800s.
James, we call it Alton.
Alton? Thank you.
Is that with an A or an E?
An A.
I'm from Michigan.
Look, I actually have a friend named Alton as well. It's spelled the same way, so thank you for telling.
All right. East St. Louis is another one.
I was just about to bring that one up. My mama said that's where they used to go to party.
Yep.
Well, I think going back a little bit, and Tim Pinnock is a resource for this, and it's the Black coal miners for Illinois, because they had coal mines there. And I'm not sure about Indiana, but I know they do in Illinois and Iowa and up through there. So I think it's a good spot to do some research too.
Absolutely. And the other thing you got to remember too, when it comes to Southern Illinois, is that there was slavery down there. A lot of people don't realize that there were people who were enslaved there, and that once encompassed a big portion of enslaved land or places where you could enslave people. I know Ed Adams, who's also my cousin, who also was one of the people, I think he's still in I've Traced My Ancestors Slaveholders group. Is that the name of that group? Maybe I'm saying it wrong. He was the first person that introduced that whole concept to me, or that whole, thought process that there was actually slavery in Southern Illinois. So that's something to consider, especially if you have family members or maybe some family history or oral history that mentioned Illinois and people maybe potentially being enslaved in that particular location, especially Cairo, Illinois, is an area that has that going on.
I've been told by a very good friend who's born there, it's Cairo.
Yeah.
I've been told.
Depends on if you came from the South or not. No, I'm serious. Cairo.
Cairo. Oh, Oh, the lady in red has joined us. We've got to officially announce her.
Finally.
I know. She's in. Angela Walton Raji joining us from beautiful Maryland. She gives us a nice wave. Would you like to say hello?
Good evening, everyone.
Oop.
All right. All right. She's here. She's in the house. So with regard to let's see, we talked about Indiana, we talked about Illinois. Let's talk about Michigan. This is Shelley Murphy. This is her area, right? Where, what are we talking about in terms of the history of African Americans in Michigan?
Lots of them. they're African Americans again. I want to say kind of even before the migration, which is the typical things, there was African Americans coming into Michigan, into that territory. And so there's pretty much a good history there. And I can speak from my own research. They came in like 1861, 62 coming in and settling and then homesteading. And so they were there. Cass County is a very popular area where I'm going to say Negroes, because that's the term they were used at the time, coming out of Virginia, going into Indiana, and then up to Michigan. And they were coming in the mid 1800s to late 1800s.
I know I have a lot of relatives that went to Saginaw that are still there.
Me
I have
too.
I have a whole wing
Yes.
of my family that I didn't grow up with over there.
Yeah, that was another of the locations for my family too, was Saginaw, Michigan, along with Grand Rapids.
Yes.
Yay!
We have a huge representation in Grand Rapids.
I hope to see them next year. NGS is in Grand Rapids next year.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Well, yeah. Well, my
Yes.
family, I have family in Grand Rapids, of course, Detroit. I mean,
Yeah.
you can't get away from Detroit. What else am I forgetting? Saginaw, as
Flint.
James brought up.
Flint.
Pontiac.
Flint. Oh, yeah.
Pontiac.
My brother's there. I was gonna say my
Pontiac,
brother lives there
Flint.
right now.
Now, I was born and raised in Grand
Yes.
Rapids. And our homestead
All right,
properties are up in up here.
Oh, you
Benzie and
see how
Manistee,
she
the glove.
Yes,
Benzie and
you see how she
Manistee,
said-
right on the lake.
Well, we're learning something here, because people laugh at me when I refer to Louisiana as the boot, and I talk about
The boot.
the ankle level people and the toe level folks
Yes.
in the boot,
Yeah.
right? I talk about
I'm the
everything up
glove.
here is like that. And I didn't realize she meant the glove, so we have to go from here to here. All right, so let's talk about Ohio locations. Research there in terms. I mean, we talked about Cleveland. Sorry,
Columbus.
Cavaliers. The Cavaliers are going through a lot right now.
They going through some changes.
They're going through some changes.
For me, Toledo.
Yeah.
Mine's is Toledo too.
Cincinnati.
Yeah, Cincinnati, you got Chillicothe.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ohio was ridiculous.
Yeah.
It was a gateway. Yeah. From here, I know Kentucky is connected to Ohio, so we have a lot of rich history here connecting those two states. You're going into freedom, so.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Chat room is chiming in. They're saying Cincinnati as a location. Yeah, as far as Michigan, Flint, Grand Rapids. Interesting. There's a lot going on in the chat room, you all. The chat room, there's some connections being made in here. Dale from EO is making some connections. Apparently Dale is related to Shannon Christmas, who is also in the chat room. There's also some conversations happening about Dyersburg, which of course only exists in West Tennessee, because I know that because my father-in-law is from there. And this is ironic that someone mentions that during this episode, because where did his family end up? East St. Louis. So there's a whole correlation. We always talk about the map, right? Look at the railways and how the railways ran. And that typically sometimes will tell you where people ventured. Angela, would you like to jump in at some point?
Well, I'm just sitting here thinking about my folks from Oklahoma. I don't know what happened, but there was from Oklahoma to parts of the Midwest. And there's certain cities that I can tell you, oh, Cherokee Freedmen are in Chicago. I can tell you that there are some state Negroes, as they were called in Indian Territory, who ended up in Ohio. And I can almost name the cities, Cincinnati and Cleveland. And of course, there was the westward migration as well. But there's certain cities, target cities in Michigan as well, not only Detroit, but Muskegon. So I'm just kind of taking this all in and thinking about this.
I forgot I'm at Muskegon. That's another location for my family as well.
I've had people there for 70
That
years.
used to be the club place.
That used to be the club place, just like East St. Louis was the club place. You're telling me Muskegon was the
We
club
go
place.
Grand Rapids to Muskegon or Grand Rapids to Detroit. Yeah. And then hit down to Chicago. That was a weekend trip.
Do you
Road
see
dogs.
Does Shelley know the members of Switch?
Actually, I do know the members of Switch.
You need to
As a
stop.
matter of fact, Bunny, the sister, is related.
Oh,
Her first child is a Murphy.
Oh, boy.
Oh my goodness. I
Yeah,
just saw
we're
Grand
related.
Rapids.
We know they lived across our house where I was born and raised at, and then the elementary school on the other side was all the DeBarges, so we all grew up together. Yeah.
You know what now? And they just had an episode of Unsung that came on
Yes,
that was about Switch.
That's a rerun. Yeah. But they're all on Facebook, and Mama DeBarge is on there too.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
Well,
they're all on Facebook.
Just in case, I mean, we
had
got to
no
realize
idea.
our demographic, they may not know who the DeBarges are. This
Or
is
Switch.
L. DeBarge. This is, that they might know him because he's probably been out more recently than the
Chico.
rest, or Chico DeBarge.
Right.
Or, we're talking about, the DeBarge, the group, Rhythm of the Night, if you've ever seen The Last Dragon. I mean, I could just go on and on and on, but they were a family from Michigan as well. If we're going to bring up celebrities, I talked about Magic Johnson earlier from Michigan. We talked about Gay, Indiana, of course, Jackson 5. Ohio, who are we forgetting? The Ohio players. Duh.
Tight now.
I'm trying to think. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was gonna say it's not a person, but an institution we can't leave out. I think, which is the historic Wilberforce University. I think we also can't leave that out as a resource, also for people.
Which university?
And Motown. Wilberforce. That's not in Michigan.
No, I was talking about Ohio.
Oh, okay.
Well, in terms of historically Black institutions, do we have any besides?
The Wilberforce, where my mother went to school.
Well, what'd you say? I'm sorry, Robin.
Wilberforce is where my mother went to school.
My dad went there too.
And then right across the street from there is Central State University. My father went there.
Okay. And any other historical?
I was gonna say I went back there and got the history.
Nice.
Last year.
See, any other places you all can think of before we start jumping into specific record sets?
Motown.
Of
Cass
course.
High. Yeah.
Well, and then you also have
Tech.
to, I was gonna say in terms of institutions, I mean, God,
General Motors.
you're talking. Well, yeah, Wendell Phillips High School on the South Side, DuSable High School on the South Side of Chicago. They've been there for eons. In fact, I have my dad's yearbook here from 1956 from DuSable. Which for me as a kid growing up in a multiracial environment, seeing this entirely Black high school doing all these things, and I was like, wow, you guys had this and that and the third, and it was completely segregated. As a matter of fact, the news just came out this week. Chicago are they number 2 in the country? Most segregated city?
I think it was number 2.
I saw that the other day.
I did too.
I believe it is that. So let's jump into record sets. Let's talk about Indiana. Indiana, they just got Christmas, I want to say last year on Ancestry with a couple of databases. What have you all made some significant finds when it comes to Indiana and your online research? What are your go-to resources for that particular state?
Marriage records and death records.
And where are those?
Those are on Ancestry.
Yes, and let me tell you, they go recent because I went down a rabbit hole that night or that day or week those came out, and I did not come out. I was just like, because it kept going on and on and on and on for several generations. And it's the full death certificate, you all. This, we're not talking about an index. Let's we have to distinguish, make sure we distinguish between those, because a lot of states do have death indexes, but they don't actually have the certificates. You'll usually get prompted to go to Vital Check to order those. No, on Ancestry, when it comes to Indiana, you are getting the actual death certificate. What else in terms of resources for Indiana? And I'm going to pull up that database so I can give people.
Well, while you're pulling that up, I think one of the best resources for Indiana, as well as other states, is the Allen County Public Library and the Genealogy Center. They are pretty much #1 as far as U.S. records, compared to Family Search in Utah for world records. But I think that's a place that people need to make a trip to. But first start online and check out what resources they have, and plan that trip. It's worth the experience to get in there. And they have holdings. It's like also a repository as well. So they got a lot of special collections.
I think a lot of folks overlook the Fort Wayne County Public Library. And I would say talk to anybody that's been to Maggie in the last 2 years. They can definitely attest to the size and the number of resources that they have. And if you're just interested, you're like, maybe I don't know if it's going to be advantageous for me to go. Check the card catalog. I always tell people there's nothing wrong with browsing, right? It's the whole point. Like, go and browse and see what they have. And they have quite a bit. And, I always as well tell people, if you're going to go visit, make sure that you're not spending so much time on the computer. Go and look at the books, because a lot of the books are not digitized.
Correct.
What were you going to add, James?
I was just going to say, one of our chatters, Chasing Rainbows, mentioned that newspapers.com has a great amount of Indiana newspapers that they found very helpful. So don't sleep on newspapers.com, y'all.
Oh yeah,
and also the vital records. I'm sorry, the vital. Forgot how to say it. It's a vital where they're inside a drawer.
Yeah.
Vertical file.
Vertical.
There it is.
Okay.
Yeah, vertical files have information that could be. The only thing that was people from like an area, they keep church records and vital records, all kinds of records and vital records.
Yeah, they've got a trove there. One other thing, if you actually had ancestors in Allen County, and I'm going to say people of color ancestry, in the city of Fort Wayne, there actually was a gentleman, and I believe from 1917 to the 1930s, named William Warfield, and the library has journals. He wrote old-fashioned handwriting journals for almost 30 years, and you can see them at the Black Museum. It's either African American Museum, downtown Fort Wayne, or they have them at the library. And it is telling the story of the Black community in downtown Fort Wayne from that time period. He journaled every night. It was very fascinating to see those journals.
I was just about to ask if you took the tour at the end of Maggie?
Yeah, I missed the tour.
I did in the beginning, but I was actually in the journals because I saw the day my daddy was born, the day my great-grandfather died in 1928, because Mrs. Warfield made macaroni and cheese and was taking it over to the house.
Wow.
I mean, he is telling the story. It's the most fascinating thing. You're stepping back into time. And it's very interesting to read what every family was doing, what was going on in church, the community, who died, who was born. It's unbelievable. I wish that would have been in a lot of other communities that I'm researching.
All right, so let's talk about, so we've got several several vital records indexes that are on Ancestry. Those will keep you occupied for a long amount of time, right? Because we've got marriages, we've got death certificates, you know, of course, with those particular documents, you know, you'll have parents' names, you'll have the name of the deceased or the people getting married. And then when you couple that together with the U.S. Social Security Applications Index, you can really get, you know, plowing through your records, especially if you know your family lived in Indiana, but you don't know where they came from before they got there. You'll get some huge clues just by plowing through those 3 databases. So if Indiana is a location that you're looking at, you know, maybe your family is still there, or maybe you don't know where they came from, you know, before that, definitely look at those 3 databases: the marriages, the deaths, and the U.S. Social Security applications. Let's move forward to Illinois. For me, goodness gracious, we are so lucky if you have folks that were in Chicago. You know, it's like records galore. I think one of my favorite databases that I don't think a lot of people utilize enough, there is a index of deaths and stillbirths on Family Search that includes the names of the parents. I mean, it's a lot of information, as well as the Cook County Death Index all the way up to the late 80s, if not 90s now, I think.
Wow.
And that's all free 99. Free, free, free. We all love free, right? That's all free. So that's also amazing. There's a hidden database on Ancestry that I don't think a lot of people know about. And it's called like Historical Births, Marriages, and Deaths Announcements. And it's labeled kind of like mysteriously, but let me tell you what's in there. Death records or obituaries that were in the Chicago Defender hidden in this database. So if your library does not have access to, you know, the ProQuest historical Black newspapers, I'll never forget, I called my library and was like, can you guys get that? And they were like, no, we can't, because it's too expensive. So I had to kind of cheat. And thank you so much, Drew, because I've having a couple errors pulling up these Ancestry pages. But within that, it's called Historical Newspapers, Birth, Marriage, and Death Announcements, 1851 to 2003. And within that collection is the Chicago Tribune, and it's also Chicago Defender is in there from 1921 to 1975. And, you know, if you have a common name or something like that, you know, you're going to pull up a lot of results if you just search for name, but be sure to write Defender in the keyword area, and that will limit your results to just the Chicago Defender. So that's game recognized game tonight for Illinois. So, Nika, anybody else want to chime in?
Yeah, Nika, I just want to say, for those of us that have Southern roots, the Chicago Defender, especially when you have a migration towards Chicago, I want to say Angela was gracious enough to pull a record for me, pull an article for me for one of my ancestors. They were just talking about any news was news. So they happened to have an article in the Chicago Defender about one of my Mississippi relatives.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So if you got a migration going that way, you may want to look up an ancestor in the Defender.
Yeah, I agree. It's an awesome resource. And don't think that your family had to live in Illinois in order for them to be in there. I've seen even just one sentence for one of my family members that they moved from Oak Grove, Louisiana to Odessa, Texas with her child, and it lists the name. And I was like, they put this in the paper? Yeah, they did. But they did. So
one thing I like to add about the Defender too is, like, I didn't have any ancestors in Chicago going back that far, or really at all. But they were reporting on things also, so that people who had left home would know what was going on back south. Like, I found things where it talked about, like, an ancestor of mine preaching or doing other things, and it's like, this is in Chicago, but the event took place way in Alabama. This is to let people from Alabama know what was going on back home. So don't be scared to use the Defender, because you'll be surprised at what you'll find, even if you don't have family in that area.
And, you know, I want to add, probably a wave of the reason a lot of them from the South was going north. You know, they was checking with family members in those areas, and it was hitting the paper. Yeah,
because you'll even find notices to say, hey, you know, grandpa Jimmy died. We're looking for cousin such and such. They need to come to the funeral. It's next week. Like, you know, you'll find stuff like that, and you'll be surprised with what you'll find, believe it or not.
Well, I think a lot of the migration also had to do with the industry that was happening in the North or Midwest versus what was going on in the South. You had the factories up there and those type things. So jobs also led a lot of people, I think, you know, migrating up there. The timbering or logging and all kind of things that happened throughout Michigan, Illinois, and Indiana.
I agree. I was just able finally to pull up dates for the Indiana stuff, just because I wanted folks to have reference for that. So the Indiana death certificates that are on Ancestry go from 1899 to 2011. So you have death certificates that are on the site that are just 6 years old. You know, that's huge. I don't know if there's another state that goes this current. Honestly, I don't know. I'd be hard pressed to find one. I'm going to pull up. I had to kind of go like a back way in order for me to find where they were. The marriages, I for some reason, I still can't. I'm getting 500 errors galore. I'm not sure what's going on with Ancestry. So any other thing you all want to add in? Of course, we got to talk about Indiana State Archives as well as Illinois State Archives, a plethora of records on family search when it comes to Indiana. Anything you all want to add in before we start talking about Michigan?
You cited a reference about Illinois death records.
Yeah, so I'm pulling. Okay. Yeah, I'm pulling up on. For some reason, Ancestry is just not loading for me. I'm going to see if True can bring that up. And let's see. Okay, so for Illinois, we've got the deaths and stillbirths. That is a database that I talked about. It goes from 1916 to 1947, and that's statewide. And then you've also got state census records for the state of Illinois, 1855, 1865. So if you've got some ancestors, maybe they were free people of color, or, you know, who got to the state pretty early, you'll find them there. You also have Cook County deaths. They've got that database from 1878 to 1994. That's an index. And I think you can actually get access to the certificates if you go to the Family Search Library. They have some of those databases now where if you actually want to get a copy of the certificate, you have to be in a Family Search Library to get that. They've got Cook County marriages, 1871 to 1920. They've got birth certificates and a birth index. In fact, I found my father and my aunt in here. That goes from 1871 to 1940. They've got, gosh, it's just so many stinking records. And a lot of times what happens is, you know, in Illinois, which is like what happens in Louisiana, you know, record sets will be isolated to the big city, you know, so Louisiana, everything, a lot of stuff gets isolated to New Orleans. With Illinois, it's sort of the same thing with Chicago. All right, so let's move on to Michigan. Any critical record sets that we're thinking about when it comes to Michigan?
I think I posted Seeking Michigan to look for death records, and I don't have it up. I got too many windows open to get another one up, because that one you can get, you know, death records. There's another one, you can search Michigan online death indexes, and I think it starts at 1867. And I'm not sure when it stops, but it starts at 1867. So Seeking Michigan, and then the online death indexes. Several states have the online death indexes also. And of course, the Michigan Archives in Lansing.
I'm looking at Family Search, and they've got a couple of different death indexes. It looks like the certificates are available from 1867 to 1897. And then you've got an actual death index for Michigan that's from 1971 to 1996. You've also got county marriages from 1820 to 1940. This is all on Family Search. Yeah, like, for some reason, I think me and True have both tried to access. With Michigan, it popped up. All right. So
for where my migrated to, I didn't know, and I put in the delayed death and all those I found in Detroit.
Oh, good.
But yeah, I didn't even know where the place was. I put in their name and when they're born, and it showed them in Detroit.
Okay, okay. There's a question from the chat room. Kevin Thomas asked, is the Michigan Chronicle digitized? And my suggestion to you would be to probably check Chronicling America, the website that's run by the Library of Congress, to see if, you know, the history of the paper and who's got the holdings for it. If it's not on one of the commercial sites like, you know, newspapers.com, Genealogy Bank, Newspaper Archive, you might actually have to go on microfilm to see if you can find the record or whatever you're trying to look for, which is a great question.
Check the Michigan Archive site too.
Yeah, I just checked on newspapers and it's not there. I'm going to check Genealogy Bank in a second.
Oh, don't forget Fulton History. Even though it's New York, they have other states on there. There's a plethora of them if you've ever used them. And it's Fulton History. I had to shut Twitter down in order to get in there.
And it looks like Michigan Desk, and this is something that we probably should point out to people, because a lot of times I get questions about which website is the best. If you notice, we all hop around everywhere, right? Like we don't all just stay in one spot. And so, you know, the ranges of, don't assume that death index on Ancestry is the exact same thing that's on Family Search, because sometimes those things are not the same. Family Search might have, you know, may end at 1 year and Ancestry may end at another year. So, you know, if you're looking for a particular record and you can't find it, it may be because it's on one site and it's not on the other. Also, you pay attention to record counts. That's something else that's very important when you're talking about doing research. You know, there are several databases that are here on Family Search. They've got Michigan, you know, civil marriages, Michigan church marriages. Well, the church marriages goes from 1865 to 1931, but it's only got 817 records. That typically indicates that it's not inclusive of everything for the entire state. Like, do you really think only 817 marriages happened from 1865 to 1931? That's why you have to look at where you're getting your information from. But if you look at the civil, it's got 34,000 marriages. But that's still, think about the size of Michigan. And that civil marriages goes from 1834 to 1974. So be sure to look at those record counts. If you see high record counts like 21 million, 12 million, you know, something upwards of that, you know, it's fairly inclusive. But then that also still does not mean that there's a record there for your ancestor as well. You can't, you know, we just can't make assumptions. So is there anything else anybody can think of that's unique to Michigan that would
Yes. I want to mention, do not forget that Michigan has a very strong Civil War history. The 102nd U.S. Colored Infantry was actually formed out of the 1st Michigan Colored Infantry. It was organized, I think, out of a farm. Well, back in the day, Detroit was just a little country town, and it was organized there. So people who may be looking for ancestors during the Civil War era, they could have served in the 102nd U.S. Colored Infantry. And I'm sure you're certainly with their history as well. And but there's some wonderful Civil War data that's there, fol3.com. And of course, research those ancestors who may have filed pensions and those widows who survived and filed a widow's pension. But definitely Michigan, rich Michigan history, and Illinois, the 29th U.S. Colored Infantry out of Illinois as well.
I want to testify to that because I actually have. I've only found one ancestor who served in the United States Colored Troops. He's not even a direct ancestor; he's a cousin. His name was Littleberry Crawford Stewart, and his pension record was really interesting. One thing that I knew already from researching him was that he hated his first name, Littleberry, so he went by Crawford. And he actually got I forget what you call in the military when you get like written up. But he got into a fight with somebody for making fun of his first name.
Does he have Indian roots?
No.
Okay.
Not at least not as far as I know. He could, but not on the side that we're related on.
Because I was mentioning in chat when that came up, Angela, about the 1st Michigan Regiment 102, also about the sharpshooters, and that is Michigan sharpshooters, which is 149 Native Americans that fought in the Civil War. And we've been tracking, there's actually a Facebook group, and a lot of the Michigan descendants of those sharpshooters.
Okay.
Very, very interesting. It's a very active Facebook page.
That's neat.
Yeah.
Wow.
Right. There's a question in the chat room. I'm sorry. Who was going to talk?
I was just going to say, mention US Gen Web is another one.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. For all this. Yes. If you aren't using US Gen Web, or let me go ahead and throw out for free the old words on Ancestry.
Yeah.
Or, you know, or forums on Ancestry. Just doing a Google search, because those will show up in a Google search if you search just right. There's a question from the chat room from Kevin Thomas again. He's like, I'm trying to get as much information as I can. He says, is there a database of Black-owned funeral home records? I heard something of this during a Freedmen's workshop. No, there's nothing that's unified. There's no repository or clearinghouse for Black funeral homes. That does not exist. We wish it did, but it did not. It does not. But the other piece here is the fact that you can look locally. You can, you know, go to the funeral home itself. If there's one that has been shut down or maybe bought by someone else, you can't guarantee that the records are there from the previous owner. It really is on a case-by-case basis. Some historical societies are really good about keeping those records. Let's say if a funeral business goes out of home, out of business, you know, but there's no national clearinghouse for Black mortuaries as much as we want there.
The only clearinghouse that I know of is the church. And because depending on, you got to go. Depending on where you're at, a graveyard is not that far, and there's typically if you're talking about only Black people, there's typically only one funeral home, depending on what time frame we're talking, that is burying the Black folks. So find the church first, then go look for the funeral homes, would be my suggestion.
If we're talking funeral homes in Chicago area, there's a million of them. I mean, you know, but depending on who your family patronized, because each family was very specific about who they went to. So, you know, I have A.A. Rayner was, you know, that was who did my family's funerals in Chicago for a number of years. But then as time went on, people started going other places, you know, and it's sort of the same thing. It's very, we're very loyal to our undertakers, so to speak. All right, so moving into Ohio, Critical Records says they've got great Ohio available. I know initially when I started doing my Ohio research, I was actually on archives.com. They seem to have better, you know, indexes and such on Ohio than Ancestry, but I believe that has changed somewhat in recent time. Any other critical records that you all can think of when it comes to Ohio?
I would say, especially if you know you have ancestors, or if you yourself are in the African Methodist Episcopal Church, you really owe it to yourself to reach out to Payne Theological Seminary. They have amazing records if you have any AME ancestors at all, especially if they were in ministry. You really be surprised at the stuff you'll find there. And then I would also definitely say that you definitely want to check out the library of the Prince Hall Grand Lodge up there in Columbus. The Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Ohio, they actually have like continuous records going back to like 1859, including membership. And I've been very amazed and impressed with what they have. And if anybody's local to the DC area, we actually have copies of what they have up there in Ohio. As well. But definitely check out those two, Payne Theological Seminary, and then check out the Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Ohio also.
And we have to also remind people why they would patronize or why they would go to those institutions to research. Because if we just throw the names out there, like, why would I go to Payne Theological Seminary if I don't know what I'm looking for?
Well, plain and simple.
Collecting.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, plain and simple with Payne. I mean, they're taking tabulations of who paid what in tithes for the year, from what church, from what seminary. You know, the AME Church is very proud of the fact that they have those colleges up there in Ohio. So a lot of the records end up going there, a ton of them. As far as the Grand Lodge goes, Ohio actually birthed a lot of Prince Hall Grand Lodges further south to include Louisiana, Mississippi, Missouri. So you'll end up finding a lot of people who may not have even lived in that state, but who are connected to an administrative body in Ohio as well. So and I think that part of the reason why that is because pre-Civil War, Ohio is a bastion of abolitionist activity. So a lot of these people are organizing, whether it's around religious life, social life, what have you. They're organizing in Ohio. That was a jump off point for a lot of stuff that happened further south and further west.
Yeah,
And why? Go ahead.
Well, Payne was also not over. They got a lot of the South Carolina resources. There was there were some were pastors at Payne. I'm sorry, for example, Bethlehem Me, and he went all the way over to Payne. Went from South Carolina to Payne Institute near the campus of where she was going to school. What was it? Right, the name of the college. It's right
Payne.
by. Right by.
Okay. Wilberforce.
The name of the college is right by Payne. Anyway, you can read. I've researched going back to find out more about the South Carolina ancestry. And their archives is just as it is. Their archives is big, and that's the only place that you're going to get it.
Absolutely. And I just wanted to make sure that people understood, because we threw out these names and we're saying go to this theological seminary. People are probably like, why would I do that? But remember this, we have to keep in mind timelines, and you've got to do an exhaustive search. You've got to go to a number of different locations, and you've got to get a number of different resources to really tell the story of your ancestors. So when it comes to Ohio records, we've got a ton of records available online between the two sites, between Ancestry and Family Search. When it comes to vital records, I mean, it's just I have to scroll a few times to get through everything in Ohio. In addition to deaths, you've got marriages, with well over 1 million plus 2 million, 3 million records within those databases. They've got county marriages in Ohio on Ancestry that's got 18 million, births and christenings index with 13 million. You've got a statewide birth index, marriage index that actually goes to 2007. So of course we got to shout out newspapers. You've got to look up newspapers. In fact, Genealogy Bank has got the newspaper in Cleveland for a long time. In fact, I had a situation I was researching in my own family where I discovered there was a shooting, and they had everything about what had happened. It was in the paper, and that was on Genealogy Bank. Is there anything else you all can think about with these particular states that we maybe haven't touched on before we get to Ask Mariah?
Military. And that would be the only thing. We touched a little on the USCTs, but those states were very much contributors during the Civil War, like Angela mentioned. So it's worth checking.
Absolutely. Let's see. Going to the chat room, people are throwing out names of funeral homes, other things. Indiana African American Genealogy Group. Karen Galloway mentions that. Of course, societies that you maybe want to research or connect with if you've got ancestors that come from this location or any of these locations. And also, keep us posted. Maybe you're just beginning your genealogy research in one of these places, and maybe some of the resources or things that we shouted out tonight have helped you get more further. Yes.
Hey, Nika, I want to apologize because True just reminded me of something. There's actually, and I want to piggyback on what you said earlier. There's actually more than one Payne University, more than one Payne school. So that's something I want to make sure I throw out there. The one I mentioned was Payne Theological Seminary, which is actually in Ohio. It's spelled Payne. You want to go, that was the one that I was referencing, where you find a lot of the African Methodist church records. There are other schools named Payne, spelled different ways in different states, but those are different schools.
For
wanna make sure
some reason,
clarify.
I just started thinking of HBCU when that word
Yeah.
came out.
Yeah, I'm like,
that
it's in
too.
Texas. Isn't it in Texas?
It's
I don't
the one
know.
I know of is in Augusta, because I hear Skip. If he's out there listening, he's always the one educating me on Payne University, the HBCU school in Augusta, where he lives.
Well, and
Well,
that's
no,
the funny
there's
thing.
another Payne. There's one in Texas though too.
Yeah,
Isn't there?
there used to be one in Alabama also.
That's why Google is your friend.
Yeah, I did Google, and I was half listening.
Yeah, but I wanted to clarify that because the one I'm talking about is a HBCU too, I believe, also. So it's like I wanted to make sure I clarified. The one I was talking about is in Ohio. That's why I wanted to specify.
Actually, yeah, you're the one you're talking about is in Georgia, because there was someone I went to high school with that went to Payne College. I was like, but I knew that when he said Payne Theological, like he was trying to distinguish between Paine versus Payne.
Yeah.
You. All right. Well, that is of course, you know what? Y'all kill me. True, say what you just typed in the chat.
She's on mute.
The Negro Motorist Guidebook, because
Yeah,
those are fill in your timeline as well.
They will, but you see how they just throw in stuff at the last minute.
Sorry,
I did an all call, and here she goes, threw it in the chat.
I had to make up for the Payne one.
She had to read up on her pain, not her actual pain, but her sort of pain. All right. So without further ado, let's get into the next piece of our amazing show. And that would be Ask Mariah. Yay! Can't you tell I've been hanging around with a two-year-old today? Ask Mariah. What is Ask Mariah? This is the part of our show where you send us your questions, queries, conundrums, your I've thrown my computer across the rooms and I'm tired of this, your I hate DNA, it gives me a headache, I can't figure this out, your I don't know what centimorgans are, I don't care, tell me, is this my father? All of those things, where you send those things to us and we, the panel, weigh in on your question or query. I always have to remind everyone that the panelists have not seen the query before today's episode, and I have to keep it close to my chest. Me and Shelly and Tony have to keep it close to our chest, because I'm telling you now, if you haven't seen a few episodes back, we will work this until the cows come home. So that's the reason why we have to guard the Ask Mariah questions, we have to keep it close to our hearts. So tonight's Ask Mariah comes from Dale Colston, who is in our chat room. And thank you so much, Dale, for joining us. Of course, the experience is so much better when the person is here. So Dale, FYI panel, Dale says she is so excited. She put several exclamation points. She wanted to make sure we knew that. All right. So here is Dale's question. I have been hoping for a Colston connection. Ancestry DNA has revealed a connection to an LC as a fourth cousin in a profile. I have checked on a few names to those, and it led me to a Duncan Sutherland. We do not share DNA. He appears to be of European descent. I am still waiting on replies. Ooh, yes, let's read that again. So Dale says, Ancestry DNA has revealed a connection to a LC as a fourth cousin in a profile. I've checked on a few names to those, and it led me to a Duncan Sutherland. We do not share DNA. He appears to be of European descent. I'm still waiting on replies. Going forward, knows her grandfather's name is Arthur Curtis Colston. He was born 1890, died 1931, and he was born in Upperville. You know I'm going to say this wrong, Shelly.
Fakir.
Fakir, because I was going to go Fakir.
That'll work too, but Fakir, it's right next to Loudoun County, not far from DC.
Okay, I went full Louisiana. All right, to an unmarried 18-year-old African-American named Martha Nickens. Isn't that a VA name? Isn't that a Free People of Color name?
Karen Sutton's Patriot of Color last name is Nickens.
Exactly, that's a Paul Hynek. Yeah, that's a Paul Hynek website. That just jumped out to me. All right, so she says that her grandfather, Arthur Curtis Colston, was born to an unmarried Martha Nickens, born about 1871, died 1953. Arthur is her paternal grandfather, Dale's paternal grandfather. We also got Paul Arthur Colston, born 1920, died 1984, who was her awesome, awesome father. Oral history says we children were told that our great-grandfather was a man named Will Colston. And we pretty much know nothing else about Will Colston. So we've got grandfather, paternal grandfather named Arthur Curtis Colston, born in Upperville, Virginia. Mother to Arthur, great-grandmother to Dale would be Martha Nickens. And Dale's father is Paul Colston. And then we've got oral history that Dale's great-grandfather was a man named, quote, Will Colston. Now, in terms of her search, actually, there's a little bit more information here. Her late uncle, her dad's brother, Dr. Charming Curtis Colston, he was a dentist, told us that their father, Arthur Colston, once traveled to D.C. to see his father, Will Colston. He was devastated when Will Colston turned him away at the door. It was clear if Will was mulatto or white. Looks like it wasn't clear. The theory that she has is that she thinks John William Colston, born 1865, died 1933, could have been her great-grandfather. He was born in Clark County, Virginia, not too far from where Martha Nickens lived. Depending on the census year, John William Colston is listed as mulatto in 1880, and then white in 1910, 1920, and 1930. Also, in various censuses, he's listed as Will and not always as John William. So it looks like an uncle from Dale's father mentioned that her dad, Arthur, went to visit his father, Will Colston, and when he was turned away at the door. The working theory that Dale has is that John William Colston, born about 1865, died 1933, is her great-grandfather. And that, depending on the census, he's listed as white or mulatto. Going further, if he is the same Will Colston that my grandfather met in D.C., he could have decided to, quote, pass, thus shunning my grandfather. That's another part of the theory. She sees that John William Colston's son, William Hamilton Colston, was born in Scott. Say it, Shelley.
Fauquier County, Virginia.
Because I'm going to say Fauquier. I'm sorry. A few miles away in 1892. Had another son, Horvath, in 1894, and a few years after my grandfather in 1890. And John William Colston was in the area around the time of my grandfather's birth. John William Colston went on to marry another, as did my great-grandmother, Martha Nickens. So that's our case for tonight. Who is the Paul? Is it John William or is it not? Panel, weigh in.
Pa ain't Pa. Miss Seeley said Pa is Pa.
I got a feeling it is.
I do too.
This one quacks like a duck.
But the only question I have is, where does she get the full name? And maybe I have this misread it, but John William is also Will. And what documents that it's a John William, or did she just find a John William? And is the thought that Will and John William are the same person? Does that make sense?
Yeah, so you're trying to find out, because here's the thing. Do we know that John William and William are the same person?
Right. And where did they see John William Colston as a full name type thing? And I'm looking at Fauquier is two. You got Fauquier County, then you have Prince William, then you have Clark County. So it's a little distance. It's not that close. But I would check also, if you're researching anything in Fauquier, she needs to also look in Loudoun and in Prince William. And on the Thomas Balk library site for Loudoun, they have all the registries of free Negroes there, and all the originals are at the courthouse. Loudoun is one of the counties in the whole state of Virginia that basically has all of their records, but it became Loudoun in 1757. Prior to that, it was Fairfax. So she needs to circle that whole county, all of those counties around Fauquier, because there's so much connection, you know, to Fauquier, Prince William, Loudoun, and all of those all around that same area.
My question is, and I'm saying this as somebody who lives in this area, I want to know where in DC this John William Colston actually was living, if they know that.
Yeah.
Because that would give you an idea too of the socioeconomic status of the person. And like even when she asked about passing, I mean, people
And
who
ethnic.
yeah, and ethnicity, exactly. I mean, when you say certain streets, I would know. Like, people who live here or who know the history of the city would know. Yeah, white people didn't live in that area too much, or So I'd be interested to know if we know that kind of information at all. If we have any idea.
Yeah, I would say something else that I would add in here as well. She mentioned DNA results, and the thing I'm wondering from off the top is she mentions that there's a fourth cousin match in a profile. Well, of course, depending on how the ages, how the generations fall in a particular family line, this fourth cousin could be a third cousin once removed. It could actually be a true fourth cousin. And I was kind of a little bit confused as to where the Duncan Sutherland came in, and whether or not this would be on that particular side of the family. So that's something you have to be kind of careful with when you're looking at DNA results. You need to confirm that this person, this LC, is a match to you on your father's side of the family. Right now, we don't necessarily know if that's the case. So that would be making sure that you test, closely related family members on that father's side, and then seeing where the chips fall. Maybe not so much focusing on the last name Colson, because that's the thing. It could be spelled different ways. When I just put in a search on Ancestry, I put in COLST question mark and then N, because it could be EN, it could be ON,
AN.
And there's a number of different ways that it could be spelled. So if you haven't tested someone on your father's side that would be able to confirm for you that your DNA matches are on that side of the family, that you need to do that immediately, because I think that would probably provide you the quickest lead on this.
Also, too, Costin is actually a very popular name in this area going back many generations. So you might want to drop the L too, also.
Yeah, misspellings would be definitely something to look at. And for him to, Bernice had posted a question, number one, how did the uncle know that the father traveled to DC to see their alleged father? And another thing to follow up with that, where has she found any white cousins or ancestries to link that somebody could have possibly passed? So
that's a great question.
I think her question was not how did the uncle know that he went, was how did he know to go to DC?
I thought that's what I said. I'm sorry if I didn't say that.
How
did the uncle know to go to DC? Right. How did he know to tell her dad to go to DC to see the alleged father?
Well, the story is, it says my late uncle, my dad's brother, told us that their father, that her father or his brother traveled to DC to see his father.
Right, and we're saying, how did
he know that his father was there? Exactly.
Yes.
Ohio or any other place.
Exactly. Right. Yeah.
Exactly. How do they know?
So that's a response for Dale to answer. And also, if and again, if someone's going to pass, they're either going to be white or they're going to be mixed with something to make them be able to pass as white. And so does her DNA show this European side coming up? So
yeah, that was my other question. And Bernice chimed in, what would direct her dad to DC. I think scouring through those European matches. But here's the thing, you can have a bunch of European matches, but until you test somebody who's on that side of the family, there's no way you're going to be able to confirm that European match is coming from your great grandfather. Unless there's something else that it's got to be a huge iceberg dead ahead. It can't just be, it's a white match. No, this is the reason why testing and knowing how to do deductive reasoning with your DNA matches is key. Something else she mentioned, because I also talked about, I went back to our original question where she brings in this Duncan Sutherland person. She says that that person manages the account for the LC on Ancestry. And I also made sure that I put in chat to tell her, just because Duncan Sutherland administers or manages the account does not necessarily mean that he is related to the person who took the test. It could be a friend, it could be somebody else who maybe wasn't sure about the technology, didn't know how to manage it. So it's something else you have to keep in mind when you see managed by, or if you just see a test. Not everybody is managing their own kids, so we can't assume, that the people match up. Something else also is when someone hasn't connected a tree to an account and you go in and select one, usually I won't consider that tree to be the law. If, like, let's say it's LC, right? And you see Colston family tree. In that sense, I will say, okay, this is probably a likelihood that's this right tree for this LC. But if I see Sewell family tree or Atlas family tree and the initials are LC, I can't make an assumption that either of those trees are connected to that person. They could be attached to someone else who has a kit that's administered by that same person who's managing it. Let's see. Okay, so Dale also chimes in. Arthur Colston, being her grandfather, went to DC to see his father. She says, I think his mom, Martha, or another family member may have mentioned DC. So it sounds to me like it was maybe two separate stories. He went to go see his dad, and family members later translated that he went to DC to go see the dad. So it could be hyperbole or not.
Interesting. There's a Colston Street in Leesburg. Let me see if there's a slaveholder, because on their website they got the slaveholders up for. Let me see, fuck here. A lot of people, again, I'm going to direct her into Loudon also, because those two interlink so much in the research of families moving back and forth and families being sold and rented back and forth. Fakir and Loudon. So I'm going to just do a Google thing with Loudon.
I would also too look and see if you have any Nickens that intermarried with Colstons in your DNA results or in just genealogy. Just see if at some point, if some Black Colstons, married in with some Black Nickens, or because that Nickens stood out to me because of just, I want to say I came across that name on Paul Hynek's site, the Free African Americans.org or whatever it is that Paul Hynek has on free people of color.
I would also say I would still try to reach out to the DC Historical Society also, just because I'd be interested to know who this John William Colston was, what was he doing. Like was mentioned earlier, if he did pass, what were the things that he was doing? Because sometimes you'll be surprised. You may find where maybe they passed and failed at it, or you just never know what you'll find with something like that, if that's true.
Any military connections at all?
That was something that I was just about to say, because based on her grandfather's birth date, he wouldn't he have been primed for World War I draft card? True.
There's a William Henry Colston, 1907. On My Heritage, they've got kind of a little plethora of Colstons. Let's see, are they? No, those are not Virginia ones, though.
So Shannon chimed in, which I think is a great suggestion, recommending having Dale to test her brother's Y-DNA. And yeah, I think that's a great idea, because if it's this great grandfather is the direct paternal line, it would show, it should show European for that particular line of the family. So that definitely is a great suggestion.
Now, interesting. I was going through some of these lodge records here in DC, and I do find a J. Colston listed here in the Prince Hall Grand Lodge of DC in 1899. So I think that's interesting.
Dale, do you use My Heritage? Because I would do some checking there. Just check the database and then follow up on Ancestry in Family Search if you don't use them a lot. They've got a John William Colston, 2 kids, wife Sarah, Virginia.
Okay, and Bernice also brought up how far back has she tracked the alleged father. It looked like, based on the information that she provided us, that she had tracked this particular John William Colston 1880, 1910, 1920, and 1930. So there seems like there's a high likelihood that that particular John William Colston would have a death certificate, but it's not a definite that he would have one.
Okay, there's a William Colston in Winchester, Virginia, which is Frederick County, but it is next to Clark County. And she might want to check there. A lot of movement between those. And if she crosses in to any of the West Virginia counties, because Fauquier, Loudoun, and those up there, Prince William, don't forget Jefferson County, which is now West Virginia. So again, all of those up in that area, those folks are going back and forth. I've been tracking up there for 10 years. And if you go in one county, you're finding the link to the next county and back and forth. From census to census, they can move. So it's really interesting because there's a William Colston born in 1836 in Virginia, got a wife, Sarah, and then they're talking about their kids. And they hopping out of Virginia into now West Virginia. So.
Awesome. All right. Well, if we don't have any other suggestions, she definitely says she'll test her brother. She will check MyHeritage. Dale, be sure to let us know what you do and maybe don't discover based on our suggestions. Also, just want to, hey, she might not find anything. We got to keep it real here, right?
Can't guarantee anything, but this is what the research is about, looking.
Exactly. So if you are watching and you have a question, query, whatever it is that you would like for us to talk about, discuss, give you some feedback on, please feel free to submit to Ask Mariah. You can find the link to Ask Mariah in the description of each and every recording of BlackProGen Live. And it's just a little submission form that you send your information over. It's really easy, and perhaps maybe you will get selected for the next Ask Mariah. So moving forward in our discussion, I definitely want to make sure that we give a shout out to the brand new website for the International African American Museum Center for Family History. This is something that just launched. Tony has been working her fanny off on this for the last, I don't know how long, for a while. And it just launched this week to much fanfare. And her and Robin are here to join us to have some discussion about it. We probably need to have an entire episode about this just so they can talk about the museum itself. But let me go ahead and start presenting to everyone so you all can just give us a brief description, whatever you'd like to say about the IAAM CFH.
Twin, you want to go first? Robin, you want to go first?
Oh, I think
she's on mute.
She's on mute.
You're muted, Robin. Unmute.
Okay, well, I'll go ahead and start. This project is like 2 years in the making, as Nika said, and Robin has been in here with us on the ground floor from day one and just absolutely poured her soul into this project. So when the center opens, Robin will direct our genealogy education programs. And so just so incredibly excited to have her aboard. We are a national research center that has a special focus on African American genealogy. And we're really excited to be serving the community. You can find us on cfh.iaamuseum.org. And just a couple of the areas of the website that I'll highlight for you. We have an on-demand learning library that has featured articles from almost everybody on this panel that you see below the website. And Robin Foster is blogging there, and she starts you from the very beginning and takes you all the way through intermediate and advanced genealogy research. So look forward to that from her. Also, I'll mention the Ancestor Archive. You can submit an ancestor photo for our Ancestor Archive, and we've had some incredible submissions over the last few days, just absolutely incredible. And a big shout out to Renata Yarborough Sanders, who contributed. And so, Robin, what do you have? What are your thoughts?
I'm kind of excited. Did you mention was this Saturday?
Oh, Search Saturday, yes.
We have some people picked out who answer the questions for people who have joined the group and who haven't joined the group. Who they're looking for, whatever question they're working on in their history. I'm excited about that. The social media is going pretty well. We'll eventually be on all of social media. We're taking a little bit at a time. I love the featured writers. They give something for everybody.
Absolutely. There's a beginning DNA article on there by Shannon Christmas, where he lists a plethora of resources for you to check out if you're just beginning your DNA research. I mean, it's a really powerful article. And then Angela Walton-Raji and Nika Smith both have articles on there about beginning your genealogy search. Bernice Bennett wrote a very informative article about USCT pension files and how rich they can be. And we've heard a lot of feedback from this article. Bernice has heard a lot of feedback from this article. I really think she really did an amazing job of unfolding to the reader exactly how rich these files can be and what they can do for your research. And then the event that Robin was mentioning is coming up on Saturday. And that is co-hosted by the International African American Museum's Center for Family History and BlackProGen Live. And we have a panel of experts whose pictures you see right there, who are going to gather on Saturday on the event page. And you can ask them genealogy questions. So we invite you to bring your burning genealogy questions and put us to work, because we're going to be, Robin and I will be there all day from noon to 10 p.m. And then our panelists will be hopping in and out and giving us a hand. So please send us your questions on Saturday. Please come and attend the event.
Awesome. I wanted to make sure that I went through some of the featured posts that were on here that you talked about,
Yes.
just to kind of give a shout out so people know what's here. So
Okay.
Angela Walton-Raji's got Finding and Telling the African American Family Story, Beginning Your Genealogy Journey. That's a great post about learning how to write and all that other good stuff. I talk about winning gold when starting genealogy in terms of avoiding certain pitfalls when you begin your research. We've also got Shelley Murphy with Timelines, Keep Your Genealogy Research Moving Forward, which of course we know it's Shelley and her So What and her timelines. You better get it together, crack the whip. Shelley's coming for you. As you mentioned, you've got Shannon Christmas, who is talking about beginning DNA for African American genealogy. You also mentioned Bernice Alexander Bennett, who's talking about USCT pension files. We've also got Akosua Moore, speaking of my people, a granddaughter's journey into the lives of her Low Country ancestors. We've also talked about Angela. And then don't forget about Search Saturday, Ask an Expert Your Genealogy Questions. So there's a lot going on. If you're not already following the IAAM I'm calling it IAAM CFH.
We call it IAAM too.
Call it. If you're not following IAAM, be sure to connect with IAAM on all of the social media networks. There's a Facebook page, there's Twitter, there's all sorts of stuff. Light them up so you know that they know you're out there and you're watching. We're just so grateful for this resource that for us to have available to us. Thank you all so much for your tireless efforts to get this off the ground and start. I just wanted to make sure that you all got some airtime to talk about that because that was a big, huge deal. Anything else you want to add in before we move on to our next current event, you all?
Can they share what they're doing with the photos?
The Ancestor Archive?
Yes. Will you share that real quick?
Yes.
I did.
She did.
I'm sorry.
Nika
I missed it.
Nika showed it.
I showed it, Shelley.
Yes.
Well,
I will say one thing, though. If you haven't read yet Akosua Moore's article, I highly recommend it. It's a bit long, but by the time you finish that article, you are so emotionally involved with her search because she just does an extraordinary job of laying out. I got the first clue, then I found this, then I found this. And by the time I read her article just to build it on the website, my mouth was hanging open and I was so emotionally invested in that search. So I highly recommend Akosua Moore's her post.
Those pictures are amazing.
They are.
Awesome.
They are. They are just amazing.
I'm pouting because I'm going to be on a research trip this weekend and I can't participate in the Search Saturday event. So if you can participate, go participate because I can't do it. So you need to go do it.
And represent you, right?
Go represent. Somebody needs to represent me since I can't be there. I'm going to be on a research trip this weekend.
Yeah. Represent BlackProGen Live.
Yes.
There you go.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, you all, for sharing your amazing site and for all the work you all have put into this. And I think I can speak for all the panelists and everyone who's contributing and say we're just really grateful for the opportunity to have the platform and the space to share our expertise with the world. Oh boy, somebody was supposed to be asleep and they woke up.
Is that Chandler? Ooh.
Was Chandler. For some reason, he likes to do this out of the room, like right after bedtime. It's really funny. I know you guys love that. I know. We're just waiting for it. Just waiting for it. All right. So let's move forward. We've got quite a few current events to talk about tonight that you all sent over. So it's a very lively current events night for us. First one. I don't want to watch slavery fan fiction. This was posted. On the opinion pages for the New York Times, and what this references is a new show that's in development from the showrunners of Game of Thrones, which everyone knows is a hugely successful show that comes on HBO. My husband watches it, my sister, brother-in-law. I can't get into it because I'm like, I don't care about unicorns and all that kind of stuff. That's not my era. It's definitely not my era. But what was I gonna say? But the showrunners for Game of Thrones are developing another show that basically dramatizes the fact that, just basically imagines as if the South won the Civil War and if slavery was still taking place in America right now. And I don't know why they didn't expect for there to be some sort of a backlash over it. Maybe they were smoking something. I don't know. But yeah. So there's just been a huge backlash over this week. And of course, it was submitted for current events. What do you all think about this? Is it okay to present revisionist history when it comes to something so painful like slavery?
No, it is not. No, it is not. Not such a sensitive topic in our country that caused so much pain and whose legacy we're still dealing with today. No, that's not. And this is definitely one for the what on earth were they thinking file. That's just nuts.
And we're repeating history in a different form because we didn't learn from it the first time.
That's
So
right.
it's not okay.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, I see what I think that they think they're trying to do, but you know, the thing that's so interesting to me is I saw a meme online. I think it was today or yesterday, where it was like, okay, so basically the show is about, oh, I don't know, the fact that the North and South can't get along in American politics. Black people are still getting treated like crap. That doesn't sound anything like what actually happened, right? So, you know, I just think it's kind of insensitive. I mean, I see what they think they're trying to do, but you know, when you start talking about slavery, just
I think they think it's funny, and I think they're trying to cater to a different age group, and I think because they lack the knowledge of the history and what actually went on, that it's a joke to them, and I think they're throwing it out there for the chaos that's in the country and how it's even being led. And if you create more chaos by putting something out that's going to be controversial, that's exactly what they want to do, is create the discussion of North against South and black against white. And it's not stopping. It just keeps going. And then you got another generation of people that are coming along that probably 75 to 80% don't even know their history, even the history of something that might have happened in their own community, and they also don't care. But what they care about is picking up this laptop or picking up that iPhone and not knowing how the heck they got it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know, and that's the thing to me. I think that is really dangerous about when you start doing that kind of, because I mean, I have a film background, right? So I never want to try to tell people what they can and can't produce. But at the same time, when you talk about a lot of our population is so ahistorical, right? When I first heard the name of the show and I heard it was called Confederate, my first thought was, I said, oh, they're going to do a show about the Confederacy and what life was like on the southern side of the war. And that's where I went. And then all of a sudden it became this whole revisionist history thing. And I was like, what? So, I mean, that to me, they would have been better off just making a show about life behind the Confederate lines.
But they want the chaos. They want the controversy. They don't want good discussion to help people get along. They want discussion to keep stuff coming apart.
Right.
Well, I would also I would also chime in as well that there's four showrunners. 2 of them are behind Game of Thrones. The other 2 are African American.
Mm-hmm.
I actually kind of think they threw them in for good measure, hoping that would maybe change minds, because there was someone African American behind it. In my opinion, I kind of feel like James, where it's like, you know, you don't want to tell someone that they don't have creative license, because then you're stifling art. At the same time, though, to me, there's a huge difference between this and Underground. Underground, it's the level of slavery that just never got talked about, or the layers of slavery that never get talked about, or if they do get talked about, it's within our genealogical community or our historical community. It's not, we never really hear about the slave who murdered the slaveholder, or who murdered the slave catcher, or who escaped. We always hear about they got hung, they got disciplined this way, they got their foot chopped off, blah, blah, blah. We never hear the other side of that. With this, it's not the hidden history, it's history just never took place. So to me, especially with art, you have to be very careful with this, because it reminds me of the time period we had in this country where lynchings were extremely elevated because of Birth of a Nation, which in essence spawned the creation, or, basically brought the NAACP to prominence, right? So this is the reason why you have to be careful with art, because yes, it's creative. It allows you, to make people think. But with the climate that we have right now, to me, I just feel like it's entirely dangerous. Like I really think this is.
It's really about money. It's another gadget rating, that they put
and it's about
there.
Money.
It is.
And
it is.
Yeah,
it's a big difference.
I think it's incredibly tacky to monetize human suffering.
Yeah.
Some things don't monetize well. Would you monetize the Holocaust? Would why would you not? Why isn't slavery a sacred topic on that? Because it's about ratings and it's about money. Yeah. And that's just, to me, that's repugnant.
And the chaos. We're led by the chaos magician. So there's constant chaos that just keeps rippling through the country.
I'm sorry, Tony, can you ask that question one more time? I don't think they heard you back on the internet.
Oh, okay. I said that some things don't monetize well. and some things are sacred topics. And what they're doing is they're monetizing human suffering.
Yeah.
And, you know, people who wouldn't dream of monetizing the Holocaust, why would they find this topic to be an acceptable thing to monetize? It's repugnant.
Well,
Okay,
I
I think
mean,
I heard you this time.
I think, yeah, I'm pretty sure that folks heard you. I would also add into this discussion. I mean, you got to think about it. How different is this in with regard to the monetizing portion, right? How different is this than, you know, these police shooting videos that we're seeing on Facebook? They're getting money to show us ads, and they're getting money to sell our data that we're producing to advertisers and other people. So they're monetizing human suffering. Because what I notice is that the videos I see victimizing Black people being, or people of color being shot by the police, or anyone being shot by the police, those get left on Facebook much longer than, you know, I mean, I could just list out a number of different things. So right now we're in a culture that's very, very focused on monetizing suffering, pain and suffering with people. And the perception, you know, changes depending on who you talk to, but really it all is monetization.
Which is really not going to get us anywhere.
No.
I think it keeps us back. Whoever said, you know, we're basically repeating things that have happened. So, you know, it's just a dangerous time right now. It really is. It's a dangerous time.
It really is. All right. Well, moving on to the next Mariah. We're on we're on current events. This was submitted by James. This is from the New York Times, July 20th. In an East Harlem park, Valentine or voodoo? James?
Yes, ma'am. Oh, yeah. So I found this article. It was floating around on my timeline, and I thought it was really interesting. What ended up happening was there is a symbol known as a veve, which comes from the Vodun or the voodoo religion from West Africa, that appears on a gate in a Harlem park. And apparently, the people who were investigating this were trying to figure out where exactly it came from, probably from someone in the community or what have you. But it's interesting seeing the politics of the community of African descent that has historically lived in Harlem for X number of decades, and those who are moving in to the community. And to me, again, when we talk about gentrification, and we find this time and time again in genealogy as well, a lot of it does have to do with space and time and geography and politics. And so to see the reactions, if anyone reads the link, which I'm sure is going to be posted online, or I can share it again. To me, I think it's interesting when you start seeing how communities change over time in those census records. Well, these are phenomena that didn't just happen 100 years ago. They're still happening today. So we need to be able to recognize that. And again, going back to a word that Tony used earlier, which is sacred. You know, the spaces where we grow up, the spaces where we fellowship, the spaces where we worship, those things are sacred. And as time goes on, how do we preserve those memories and at the same time make way for so-called progress? So I thought it was an interesting article, and hopefully folks will check it out.
All right, moving forward to our last current event for the evening, which is another article that sort of talks about gentrification, so to speak, from the Washington Post on July 2nd. As data centers bloom, a century-old African-American enclave is threatened. And this is in Virginia, and this has to do with Amazon. I think, let's see, I think, Tony, you submitted this one? Or maybe you didn't.
No, I didn't.
Okay, I can't remember who submitted this one, but basically I read this piece and it basically talks about this historic location for African Americans in Northern Virginia that they're basically trying to claim eminent domain to run these high wired systems through for Amazon. And they're basically uprooting all these elderly African American people out of this community. And so, this is something that's happening all over the country. And in some ways, we haven't really thought about it because, I mean, think about it. The area where my family's from, we're one of the last African-American slaveholder, or not slaveholders, but one of the last African-American families that still owns their land down there, because so many folks left the area and they allowed other people to buy their land up, that now you've got somebody like Richard Spencer, who's the head of the alt-right, who owns thousands of acres where my family is from. And that's how he makes his money. is off of corn subsidies there. But the history that's tied there were formerly enslaved people. There were folks that was the first thing they got after they, were, the 15th or 13th Amendment happened. I mean, there's so much history there, but folks became detached from it. And the same thing is happening in our inner city locations as well, because, the children move out, they go to the suburbs, they do other things, and this historical community is still there. And then, unfortunately, this is what happens when, when big money needs land and needs resources, they come to these little locations and they don't necessarily think about it. Is there anything else you want to share about this, James, before we move on and close out?
No, I think you pretty much covered it. It's just, and again, it's the same thing I talked about the last one. It's just, preserving those spaces and also moving forward with the times.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And above preserving those spaces, preserving the stories, preserving the history. I think that's what we're all about here.
Absolutely. Make sure you preserve the history. Don't just leave mom and them in the neighborhood and then and there's nobody there to capture the history. I mean, you got to think about all those people that live in the little community where that Amazon project is supposed to be running through there, that fiber optic stuff is supposed to be running through there, and all the history that's sitting there in those homes. And then you move it, and then sometimes I've seen where elders, where they're comfortable in their homes, and you uproot them from there, and that just kills their spirit. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So, I almost feel like as a result of like this article, like someone needs to, maybe the local historical society, like someone needs to go in there and get that history of that neighborhood and those people before they get separated. Because who in the world knows what's going to happen after that? So, gosh, something to definitely consider, you all. All right. Well, we are wrapping up for the evening, but I wanted to make sure that I reminded everybody about the next show. Our next episode is going to be Tuesday, August 15th, and it's called Well, And we're going to be talking about privacy in genealogy and DNA. And you're like, what do you mean privacy? Well, should you post your GEDmatch kit numbers in a Facebook group? If you have a situation brewing with DNA, and it's very private, and some of the people who are involved are finding maybe some life-altering information, should you blog with their real names, or should you be using pseudonyms? Or how are you managing information for the kits that you administer? Are you automatically uploading to GEDmatch and you're not talking to the people who submitted the kits? These are things that you should consider when you're talking about genealogy and DNA. And we're going to talk about all those different topics on the next iteration of BlackProGen Live, which will be Tuesday, August 15th. Same bat time, same bat channel. And you as well, we've got some other shows coming up. Thursday night, Miss Bernice is going to be talking about the African American Odyssey of John Cazell with Kevin Lothar. We've got the next iteration of the African Roots podcast this Friday, July 28th with Angela Walton-Raji. And also don't forget to check out our buddy Dear Myrtle with Mondays with Myrt and Wacky Wednesday each and every Monday and Wednesday. Get the latest and greatest from BlackProGen in your inbox. Subscribe to the Lowdown today. Check the description of this recording and any other BlackProGen Live episode for the link to subscribe to get our blogs, podcasts, and more directly in your inbox. Was there something we forgot to talk about tonight? Or maybe you have a question for us. Feel free to tweet us at BlackProGen or hashtag your comments or questions with BlackProGen as well. And don't forget, also, we've got a cracking off chat room that happens every single episode. We have to make sure that we say thank you to all of our chatters who are here. Our regulars, Shannon Christmas stayed with us the entire night. Karen Galloway was here as well. Barbara Scott, Rose Shiver. We also have Dale from EO. Thank you so much for submitting your Ask Mariah case. We've got Tyrone Craft, who joins us each and every week, Denise Muhammad, several other folks. Thank you all so much for joining us. And don't forget to check us out on Tuesday, August 15th for, privacy and genealogy and DNA. I am Nika Smith, your host here for BlackProGen Live. And on behalf of all the panelists, we want to say good evening and have a great week. Bye.